You're listening to Thursday Night AMP on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
And welcome back to the Thursday Night AngryMarks.com Pro Wrestling and Mixed Martial Arts podcast, also known as Thursday Night AMP. But we're not angry tonight. We're just a little bummed. It's kind of been a rough day. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but I got two people on the line I want to introduce first, starting with my co-host, Jason Harlan, a.k.a. The Great Sudoku.
I need to work out some hazy details from that last night we hung out in Roppongi, Stevie.
Yes, indeed. I believe that the Vice Squad showed up and hauled us away.
Indeed they did. It was a wild night.
Well, it's been a wild night that led to a dark day, but we're going to cheer up a little because we have a special guest on the line with us, returning to the program, I might add, not to be confused with one-third of the New Day. He is not Kofi Kingston. He is Michael Kingston. Good evening, sir.
Also not Eddie Kingston, just in case there's any indie fans out there, too.
Yes, indeed. The last of a dying breed, not to be confused with the author of the Headlocked comic book series. And before we get into the grim news of the day, I want to get started on a good note and talk about this remastered edition that you launched the Kickstarter campaign for. It's already successfully backed, but that doesn't mean people can't still get into it and get these rewards.
Yeah, one of the things that we do, I mean, the Kickstarters have been the lifeblood of our series, so the books that you get through Kickstarter aren't available anywhere else. For us, it's not, I mean, it is about obviously funding it to the level that I can pay my artists and my printers, but it's also our pre-order. You know, we don't put our books through comic book stores. I do sell them online and at conventions, but the Kickstarter book, the book that you get through Kickstarter has 30 extra pages that you can't get anywhere else because we want to encourage people to get the books through Kickstarter. I'm not worried so much about, obviously, our funding goal. Our funding goal is just what we need to produce the book, but I'd like to sell, obviously, you know, get as many people to sort of pre-order the book through Kickstarter as possible because that's the way that helps us out the best.
Yes, and let me offer a little testimonial right now to those of you listening. I did indeed get in on the last Kickstarter. I pre-ordered, as Michael put it, and once it was successfully funded, I sat and waited patiently, and one day, just out of the blue, without me even being prepared for it, a package arrived on my door with a illustrated by Jerry the King Lawler cover and autograph, too, and I was super stoked.
I'm glad you liked it. That's the key. You know, I mean, I think everybody so far has been really positive about what we've been doing, and you know, people seem to universally like the story. So, you know, I just want to keep it going as long as we can keep it going.
Absolutely, but we're remastering here. We're keeping it going, but we're also going back to the roots. So, tell everybody a little bit about the remastering project.
So, a little bit about obviously the backstory to Headlocked. I was a wrestling fan and a comic book fan forever, and there were never any good wrestling comics. So, I decided to make my own wrestling comic, you know, that I thought that wrestling fans would want to read, you know, because everything before that had been Undertaker fighting demons and Ultimate Warrior stripping Santa Claus naked and, you know, weird, just oddball stuff. And there was never anything that I felt like, you know, existed for wrestling fans. So, you know, I was confident that there was a market for Headlock. So I took it to publishers, you know, just about every publisher in comic books, and I talked to them, and we were summarily shot down by all of them. And one guy in particular literally laughed in my face. And I heard it all. You know, wrestling comics don't sell. Wrestling fans don't read. You know, no one's ever going to read this. I mean, we heard every awful thing. You know, so sort of, you know, without any real sort of comics background per se beyond my own sort of what I taught myself. You know, I had hooked up with Visionary Comics, and they sort of showed me the ropes. You know, and they were an up and coming studio. I mean, they're still doing great things. And then, you know, we put a book together. I mean, I worked probably almost a year and a half working 2 jobs to pay for the art and pay for the printing. And comics are extremely expensive to do them right. And it's probably something that not a lot of people think of. You know, they think of 60-cent newsprint magazines and whatnot, but all this stuff costs a lot of money to do it right. Mm-hmm. So we made Headlocked, and we made collected it into Headlocked: A Single Step, which was our first trade paperback. And then, you know, we just kept chugging along. And then once Kickstarter became a thing, we were able to use Kickstarter, and our production budget essentially doubled. I got a new artist was Mikhail Molapola, who's a wrestler from New Zealand. Joe Thompson came on board. You know, so the books that we've done through Kickstarter look a lot better than the first book. You know, it was everybody's first book. You know, Randy was just starting out as a penciler, and Jessica was a first-time colorist. Jerry had just started coloring again. So, you know, when I look at that book now, I mean, I'm super grateful that that book existed because it's everything, we built everything off of that book. But, you know, now when I have it on the table next to the other 2, like, I want people to pick up that other book, the Kickstarter books, the Last Territory books, because I want them to look at those first to see what we're capable of. And it kind of occurred to me that as I move into less personal styles of distribution, you know, if I put the books on Amazon or if I put the books on, you know, through comic book stores, people aren't going to be able to see that other book on my table. And if they buy that book, and it's, you know, I mean, I feel like if they buy that book, it's got to be our best. It's got to be the best representation of what we do, so they stick on for the ride. So we're inking and recoloring the entire book, putting about 50 new pages of content into it, and then we have stories from Samoa Joe, MVP, and the Young Bucks. And I think it's a really, you know, for people that don't want to buy it, you know, or that already have the book, the story's not going to change. We're upgrading the art.
Right, like you said, if I can interject, like you said on Kickstarter, it's not like George Lucas. You're not going to go back and make Han shoot first. Correct.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if I had the time, if I felt like we could do it, I would just have Mikhail draw the whole thing, so the whole thing is sort of cohesive. But the story itself isn't going to change, and I don't want to punish anybody by making them feel like they have to buy 2 books. But I do want, you know, going forward, I think, you know, as our name grows, people are going to have higher expectations for us. So I just want, you know, if they buy that first book, I think that it needs to be the best representation of what we can do. So that's why we decided. It was sort of unexpected. It wasn't, you know, when I started the year, this wasn't sort of my plan. My plan was to do the Kickstarter for Volume 3 of The Last Territory, but, you know, I really felt like this was something I needed to do first before we move forward.
Well, I think remastering is a great word for it, and as somebody that reviews music, I can relate to that concept because you'll get albums that came out in the 1970s or the 1980s where they did the best they could with the technology they had at the time, the budget they had at the time, and then they went on to be critically acclaimed, and then they looked back at those albums and went, yeah, that was a lot of fun, but it doesn't sound as good as the rest of our stuff, so let's go ahead and remaster it and make it sound really good like we always wanted it to.
Yeah, and I agree. I definitely agree, and I think I just think for us it's a necessity. I mean, we can't afford to lose anybody, you know. And I mean, mostly we built Headlock on the sort of, you know, on the wrestling fan base, and as we start to gain a little more recognition on the comic side, you know, there's going to be people that are going to have higher expectations for art that I think we're hitting now. That I think maybe in 2008, 2009 we weren't necessarily, you know, hitting, and I think that. You know, we've got an example up on the Kickstarter, the difference between the 2 pages, and I think that, you know, when people see it, they understand. So, and then Jerry's putting a new cover on it. You know, we've got all kinds of cool stuff set up for it. We're going to put an intro story on, just a fun little thing. And then, you know, I think it'll be a good book for people. You know, I think people will enjoy it. I mean, not that I don't think people obviously enjoyed our previous iteration of it, but if you want to get both books, that's cool. But again, like I said, I'm trying not to punish people for not having the other one.
Exactly. And I just want to throw this in as an aside. I love the fact that all of the pledge levels, and I don't even remember if it was this way the last time. I'd have to go back and look at the level I pledged at and see if there were any cute names back then. But these names for all the pledge levels are for wrestling fans. When you've got pledge levels like Hype Brothers and Freebird Rules and Keyboard Warriors. Yeah, Time Splitters. I knew Jason was going to mark out for Time Splitters. That one was made specifically for him.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, I try to keep things interesting, and I guess I want people to know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm one of them. I'm not some dude who's trying to cash in on wrestling. I'm a dude that goes to wrestling shows on the weekends and marks out and spends 90% of my time watching wrestling on TV. So, you know what I mean? I guess I want people to know that this isn't somebody looking to cash in or whatever. We're just wrestling fans. Well, we all love wrestling, and we're all just trying to make a cool buck.
Absolutely. And since we all love wrestling, I want to use that as a segue before we come back to the Kickstarter in a minute. It's been a sad day for wrestling fans. We had the news late last night, early this morning, that the ninth wonder of the world, Chyna, passed away. And whether you agree or disagree with her adult career after pro wrestling, you can't help but admire the fact that she was a pioneer in wrestling. She wrestled men long before Lucha Underground came around and kind of made that the in vogue thing on TV. She was really blazing trails with that and winning the Intercontinental title and entering into the Royal Rumble and doing things that back in those days a woman didn't do in a man's wrestling world. And we owe her a debt of gratitude for that. And it's tragic that she died so young, and it just, I don't even know what to say beyond that. So I guess I'll let somebody else say something. Michael, I'll start with you.
I think, and this is one of the things about wrestling that's very kind of polarizing, I think, and it's the thing that sometimes people tend to conflate, is there's a creative side and there's a business side. And I think most of the people who love wrestling and the people who participate in wrestling love the creative side and maybe not the business side so much. And I think Chyna is the perfect example of that. When you look at a woman, I mean, and I don't obviously know her. I mean, I've read up on her and I've, followed her career. But I mean, when you look at a woman who, she was a large woman. I mean, when she was younger, she clearly had, some masculine features. Life's tough on girls to begin with. And I think it's even harder on girls like that. So she came from a broken home. She's struggling for acceptance, and she finds acceptance in wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, that's the beauty of professional wrestling and I think amongst the fans too. I mean, a lot of the fans of wrestling are disenfranchised, socially disenfranchised people. I mean, I was a dork growing up, and you find acceptance with other wrestling fans. And I think that's the sort of the beauty of wrestling. I mean, not only did she find acceptance, but then she found adoration, and then in theory, she had a relationship with somebody. So she found love from wrestling, and then she lost all of that, like all at once, in such a way that she'd never be able to get that back. I mean, obviously just circumstances being what they were, she was never going to get back into WWE. And without WWE, all of her outside projects aren't going to be, you know what I mean? Like, people aren't going to have the same level of projects for her if they don't have that machine behind her. So I think she had, there's somebody that had sort of a tragic upbringing, and then she found all this happiness in the, the beauty and the art of wrestling and the passion of its fans. And then, to a certain extent, the business sort of took it away from her. And I think that put her in I think that would put anybody in a pretty heavy hole. And I don't know if she was ever able to completely get out of it. I met her a few times. She was always very sweet. She was very nice, and everybody that I know who knew her always had really nice things to say about her, And I think sometimes, the world can be tough on people that have sensitive hearts.
I agree. And I think you're right that she was always looking for that thing to replace professional wrestling in her life. And if it wasn't at the level of WWE, it was never going to work for her, because she'd already been to the highest peak you could go, and she wasn't going to go down and do Ring of Honor or Total Nonstop Action or any of the other things that were out there that were theoretically available to her. She'd already been in the peak, and what was left for her after that. And I think she struggled to accept that. And I know Jason doesn't profess to be an expert on her career by any stretch of the imagination, but I can imagine you have a few thoughts to share.
Sure, yeah. At 45, it was way too young for her to be taken. And as you mentioned, yeah, she was hunting for the Intercontinental title, which was, a male title up until she was the only female that's held that title, I believe. And yeah, long before Lucha Underground came along, she was the one that was in there mixing it up with the boys. And yeah, I mean, at the time, I was more a fan of ECW. I was more a fan of WCW. But one thing that I am a fan of hers that she did outside of the wrestling ring, she was on one of my favorite shows ever, Third Rock from the Sun.
That's right. She did several TV shows, too. I believe she was also on Xena Warrior Princess, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought she was too. I mean, there were always rumors that she looked like Lucy Lawless, but yeah, I thought she had a cameo on one of those too. I'm trying to verify that online, having some trouble looking that up, but yeah, I do remember her on Third Rock. She played Janice. It was a great series. She was great in her role, and everything she did outside of the wrestling ring, she brought genuine authenticity to, and she was just a genuinely funny person and had a wonderful sense of humor, and I appreciated seeing her outside of the ring.
I agree. And I think the reason that it's a little hard for people to reconcile is the adult career. But, when you're a creative person and you don't have the creative outlet that you used to, you'll try different things. And she tried that and got some flack for it. And then WWE clearly didn't want to have anything to do with her after that. And
but this kind of goes to the larger part of sort of a double standard, though, because obviously everybody knows she's done it, and probably 99% of the people that are sort of shaming her for whatever have probably watched her in it. And I think that sort of sucks too. You know what I mean? Like, it's a giant industry and people make all this money, but then we sort of act like it's a taboo thing for the people that perform in it. And I do think that that's sort of a crummy double standard for, you know what I mean? Especially, I guess, for female performers more than males, because they don't seem to get it as much.
Well, yeah, the perfect example of hypocrisy in that case would be The Godfather being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. This is a guy who legitimately pimps hoes. He has a strip club. Okay, it's okay for him, but it's not okay for Chyna. That is a huge double standard.
No, I agree 100%. And there's, I don't know. It upsets me. And I think all of that's just window dressing at the end of the day, because I think, ultimately there was always going to be that awkward relationship dynamic with her, and you know what I mean? I think any sort of reconciliation with her would drag up all of that old dirt. I just think no matter what she did, I mean, if she was if she's clean as a whistle, I don't think that they ever would have been able to put her in the Hall of Fame while she was alive. I think deep down she knew that. One of the things I wish that she had sort of been able to keep herself together. I would have liked to see her be a bigger part of, like something like, say, Shimmer when it was getting off the ground, and maybe being able to lend some star power to that. Obviously she did more than enough for women in wrestling, but, it would have been nice to see maybe if she could have found some sort of outlet there to, maybe take something that's just for women and put it into another, into another level. But, I don't know. It's what hit me pretty hard, I mean, they all kind of do, but for whatever reason, this one really got me just because I think it's so tragic.
Yeah, it bothers me for many reasons. One of them you already stated is that she could have had so much more of a role in wrestling today than she did, especially with women's wrestling in the last year having such a renaissance between NXT and Shine Eye pay-per-view and Shimmer Women's Wrestling. It just feels like there's even more of it now going on than there ever was, and at a higher level. And just with Kana coming into NXT, we can see that they're taking it seriously to a whole new degree in WWE alone. And you would have liked to have seen her come back to be an emissary or be part of that and say, hey, I was here, I was one of the originals, but you're the next generation, so I give my respect to you. It would have been nice for her to be involved. But even more personally for me, at the time when I was rekindling my love of wrestling, when I was jumping back in with both feet after being away for a while, one of the most memorable things right around that time was the relationship between her and Eddie Guerrero. Just the whole mamacita, the relationship they had on TV, and it was genuine chemistry. You could tell, even though they were playing this part because it was what they were scripted to do, you could tell they had a working relationship where they were friendly with each other and they got a kick out of what they were doing. It was heartfelt and it was fun to watch. And when I think about those segments and those skits, it tears me up because that, as a wrestling fan, was one of the things that I loved, was getting to see Eddie Guerrero's personality as he interacted with her. It made me a bigger fan of him.
Sure, and I mean, you could argue, I think, that was the program that sort of put Eddie on the main event path, whereas I think, before he was sort of used in that upper mid-card work rate sort of role, and I think this is where you really got to see his personality really shine through. Mm. And much like I'd say like with Rikishi, I mean, for all the things that Rikishi has done, I mean, I think his pairing with Too Cool was what made him, a big star more than anything else, at least in my mind, and I think sometimes there's just that one program that puts you on the path. Edge's program with Matt Hardy and Lita, for however messed up that was, is what turned Edge into a main eventer. There's that. And I think that Chyna was that program for Eddie. Like, that's where I think people started accepting him as more of a real, personality and not just a dude who was a really, really good wrestler.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say you bring up a good point there because, he had been over in WCW, but, it really wasn't until he got that Latino heat gimmick with Chyna in WWE that he really worked what I would say is a WWE sports entertainment style, and not only worked that style, but was able to get over with that gimmick with the crowd and kind of turn the ones who aren't on to a guy that's a fantastic wrestler, like say, a Dean Malenko, who never really caught on, to someone like Eddie Guerrero, who could catch on with the crowd.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that was just that inner personality that, WCW was always going to script him to have a great match against another great cruiserweight or great wrestler that had great technical ability, but they weren't going to give him that featured role where he could go out there and give that shit-eating grin like, I'm going to get away with something. You're going to like me doing it or you're going to hate me doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And WWE, I don't know how WCW managed to miss the boat on that so much, but WWE realized what a gem they had when they signed with Chyna. Like, this guy can work a camera. He's a star. Look at that smile on his face. We know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think that definitely was the beginning of him sort of, catching to the next level. And I mean, that's the hardest level to get to, I think some guy, I think obviously more guys get to 3/4 of the way up the mountain and they get to, to that main event sort of status,
likes to say. Everybody grab the brass.
I mean, he beat Brock Lesnar.
Yeah. Oh, you have no idea how much I marked out when I watched that pay-per-view when he hit that frog splash and pinned Brock. I thought I was seeing the second coming right in front of my eyes. Like, this isn't supposed to happen. I can't believe it. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic moment in wrestling, It really was. And, it's a good deal. I think that, I think that's one of the impacts on Chyna's legacy that I think people don't necessarily think of. I mean, you think of all the other things she did, but I do think that there was part of that where she, whatever she brought out in Eddie or whatever that program allowed him to portray, allowed him to, become a next level guy.
It's kind of sad that I'm just finding out about this now after she dies, but yeah, just looking up stuff on Chyna online, I found out Chyna was vegan too, just like me.
Yeah. Look at that people don't know about her that they're just finding out now. And one of the things that I think Michael mentioned that's really important is that she was so fearsome looking and so devastating to be in the ring with, but she was such a sweet and tender person outside of the ring that she had that reputation that people who met her at conventions or fan expos or wrestling shows or anywhere had nothing but nice things to say about her. It's like she was one of those people that really turned it on, as they say. When she was in the ring, she wanted you to be afraid of her, but outside of it, she was just as gentle as a lamb. And I think Awesome Kong is another one of those examples of that. Like, you wouldn't ever mess with Awesome Kong in the ring, but everybody who meets her has nothing but the nicest things to say about her.
Agreed.
So maybe a little awkward to transition back to Headlocked from that, but that is what you're principally here for. We didn't plan on anybody dying in the last 24 hours when we booked this interview. We didn't plan on Prince dying either, and I'm also heartbroken about that. So it's been a rough day in entertainment. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, one of the things where it does sort of tie in, I guess, is, the book Headlock is a love letter to the craft of wrestling, and sort of the negative aspects of the business are what drives it forward. And I think it's an important line. I think sometimes the business gets painted with a broad brush, or, and I think one of the unfortunate things sometimes is that wrestlers get blamed for things that are out of their control. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of heat on Roman Reigns right now and whatnot, but I don't think most of the problems people have with Roman Reigns have to do with Roman Reigns or his performances. It's just how he's been booked, or, the same with John Cena. And, once John Cena started wrestling the way people wanted him to wrestle, then people kind of laid off on him, but I think most of the people I know in wrestling tell me, they're like, yeah, I wrestle for free. It's all the other BS in the business that you have to pay me for. And I think, that's the line we sort of walk with Headlocked, being sort of a love letter to the craft of wrestling. But at the same time, sort of trying to highlight some of the, some of the aspects of the business that make it such a difficult journey for anybody that wants to, put their toe in that pool.
Right. Anybody that stands in front of that mirror, is you can literally see a picture of. You can see, looking in the mirror and thinking, I can be a pro wrestler, or I can be this big muscular guy that's popular and acclaimed, but you're still a skinny kid trying to find your place in the world. It's like, it's what you can see and it's what you want to do, but how do you get from where you are to there? And the road to get there is incredibly perilous, and it also takes lives too. Unfortunately, we're seeing that a lot this year in the past few months with people that passed away, that it is a difficult road. There are a lot of bumps, and you don't always make it to the big leagues. You don't always make it to superstardom and lots of money and fame. Sometimes it takes you down a dark road.
Well, I think sometimes it doesn't necessarily take you down a road that brings you a lot of fame, but I think that, I know a lot of guys who they just wrestle on the weekends, or occasionally, or once a month, or whatever, They had their sort of WWE dream, and I think they recognize that ship has sailed, but they still do it because they still love it. And I think, the passion that everybody has for wrestling, the fans, the performers, and everything, I think is incredible, and I think it's unparalleled to a certain degree. You don't see, there's a story that's gone around, and I think he's told the story on a podcast before, but there was a time when Tommy Dreamer was willing to get shot for an angle for ECW. Like he had pitched an angle where he got shot in the arm. He was going to allow somebody to shoot him with a gun to put over a wrestling angle, and thankfully it never happened. Paul Heyman talked him out of it because he was worried the bullet was going to, hit a fan. Not so much worried about shooting Tommy, but, there's a level of passion. It inspires a level of passion and a level of devotion that I don't think anything else does. And, I don't know. I think that's one of the things that I love the most about it. I mean, obviously, I feel it as a fan, but just to see what it inspires in everybody else, I think that's neat.
And sometimes it bothers me that it seems like the most judgmental people are people in the wrestling business themselves, because you mentioned the people that if they just want to wrestle on the weekend because they know they're never going to make it into WWE, there are people that are in the upper levels that'll look down on that and be like, yeah, you're just a weekend warrior. You're never going to make anything of yourself in this business, kid. Well, what if they don't want that? What if they just want to go out there and be passionate about wrestling, like you just said? What if they just want to go out there and do what they can do on a weekend? Hopefully they're well enough trained that they don't hurt themselves or hurt anybody else, but maybe that's all they aspire to. Maybe not everybody has to make it to the big leagues either, and maybe it's okay if you want to just go out there and put on a good match on a weekend.
I think that there's a line, though, because obviously, I'm sure we've all seen the videos of, skinny kids in wife beaters,
Yeah, well, that's why I said train. Because we want trained people to do this. We don't want skinny kids that have no idea what they're doing.
Right. I mean, I think at the same time, you still have to be sort of respectful of the craft, like, and not disparage it. Because, I mean, you know, if you're a kid and you go to an indie show and that's your first sort of experience with live wrestling and you see, and it's horrible, you know what I mean? Maybe it puts you off. I mean, maybe it's bad for the art form overall. I mean, so I do think that there's levels that people, I think no matter what your involvement is as far as in the ring goes, I do think that there's a certain personal investment that you definitely have to take in training, in gear, in, you know, looking a certain way. And that isn't super regulated. And I don't necessarily know how you'd regulate it, but that is the one thing that is sort of disconcerting when you see the carny dudes with the shows with, you know, the doinks and, you know, or whatever, tribute shows for dead wrestlers.
Right, or put a ring in their backyard and think they have a wrestling federation.
Right. And that's the kind of stuff I think that people get hot about, and I think ultimately, you know, sometimes other people get caught in the wash on that. But, you know what I mean? I definitely do think that there's a difference between being a wrestler and playing a wrestler, or playing wrestler. And I think it's the guys that play wrestler, unfortunately, that do the most damage. I think it'd be nicer or whatever if there was like a sort of a universal etiquette that gets taught. But I think sometimes too with the schools, sometimes you get a guy who's just going to try to make a few bucks by getting some guys to, you know, teaching some guys how to take bumps, but he's not teaching them the etiquette and how to carry themselves and, you know, how to protect the business or any of that stuff. And I do think that there's definitely a line there that I think there's a lot of people that are on the wrong side of, and it wouldn't break my heart to see that stuff go away.
Right. And when I say trained, that I don't just mean, like you said, go to a guy who can teach you how to take bumps. Like, go to a guy like Lance Storm, or go to a school like the Monster Factory, where people that have actually done it successfully at a high level can tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong and show you.
Right. No, absolutely. And I do think that that's definitely a thing, but I don't know if you don't live near those places, you know, and again, I think sometimes people don't think, I mean, like for me, like I knew when I wanted to do my comic, like I knew what it was going to cost me, and I knew I had to make that money because you can't fake it. You know what I mean? Like I can't decide to hand draw and color my book on paper and staple it at Kinko's. I mean, I can, but, you know, and I mean, whatever. I mean, some people do that and some people do that well, but,
right. But you wanted a real comic book that would really be in stores. You wanted it to be, even if you were doing it on a modest budget, you wanted to feel like it was just as real as anything as Marvel or DC puts out.
Correct. So, I mean, there was an investment I had to make. I mean, and that's the problem, I think, is sometimes guys are like, well, I could do this now if I give this guy $100 in my town, you know, instead of saving $3,000 and getting a plane ticket to Calgary or whatever. But unfortunately, I think you find that the people, if you're not willing to make that crazy investment at the beginning, you're probably not going to go anywhere. You know, there's not a lot of spots in the business, and there's a lot of people that want to do it. And I think that's the other thing that people don't think of. I think in any field of whatever, even in comics, I mean, there's a ton of people that want to do comics, and there's a ton of people that approach me about doing comics. And when I explain to them what it entails and what it's entailed for me, a lot of people get scared away and they don't want to do it. You know, because there's always going to be somebody that's going to be there that's going to be willing to outwork you or to take that, you know, to do what you're not willing to do, you know, the right way. So I do think that, you know, if you have those dreams, I wish there would be somebody there to tell people this sort of thing. Like, hey, you can do anything you want, but you have to be honest with yourself too, you know. If you weigh 110 pounds, like, you can't be Hulk Hogan. Like, that's just, that can't happen. So, you know, but you see guys trying to do that, you know, and that unfortunately is the problem. I mean, you have to sort of be real with yourself too at the same time.
Can I say that everything you've just said, I would like to record and staple into a podcast on my rap website, because there are so many dreamers in the music industry too who think, well, I can make an album with GarageBand and I can set up a recording studio in my bathroom and it'll sound great. No, invest a few $1,000s in your craft. If you have a dream, take it seriously, go to a recording studio, work with a producer, do it the right way.
Right. And I see it all the time with people. I mean, I see it with Kickstarter. I mean, you know, I've been very fortunate with how Kickstarter has worked out for me, but I see a lot of people who they just put it up there because they want somebody to pay for their stuff. But I mean, like, before I even went to Kickstarter, I mean, I spent 3 years building an audience for Headlock by traveling to wrestling shows and going to Comic-Cons. And, you know, like this past year, I was on the road every weekend from May to November. I just did a stretch of 4 different states in 4 weekends. I was in Chicago, and then I was in LA, and then I was in Dallas, and I was in Seattle, and I live in New York. So, I mean, none of those places are where I live, and I have a regular job. I work 60 hours a week at, and it's, you know, like, that's what I did. That's what people don't see. You know what I mean? That you can look at the Kickstarter and see the money raised and think, oh, I can do that. But nobody takes the time to look behind at the hours and the miles and the sacrifice. And, you know, I mean, New York Comic Con every year is on my wife's birthday. So, you know what I mean? Like, I have to, I'm at New York on my wife's birthday every year because it's our biggest show of the year, and she knows and she gets it. But, you know, those are the things that you have to sometimes sacrifice. That's more of a sacrifice for her than it is for me. But, you know, it's how things go. And it's just, you wish that somebody could, you wish that you could, I think you cheapened it to a certain extent. I think because, you know, in the movies, it's just a montage, you know, it's a 2.5-minute song. Somebody's working out, you know, or whatever, doing whatever it is that they do. And then they come out the other side as an expert. And, you know, I almost think all those Rocky stories, those underdog stories or whatever sort of cheapen the hard work that it really takes to get to the mountaintop.
I always say the same thing about anybody in the NBA, for example, who makes an effortless looking 3-pointer. And I always say, how many hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of hours did they spend practicing making that look effortless? It only looks effortless because they put so much effort into it.
Right. And then you have to understand, I mean, I always try to tell people too, I mean, everybody starts at a different level, a different skill level. I mean, if you're going to use the basketball analogy, I mean, Shaquille O'Neal, I mean, he was born with, you know, amazing athletic gifts, and he didn't have to work as hard as somebody who maybe is 6'1", because there's nobody that can take Shaq's job. I mean, obviously he never got better at free throws, you know, his entire career. So, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't have to work at that, and he never did, and it showed in his performance. Whereas you see, like Steph Curry now, obviously, I mean, there's a million guys his size. So he's got to outwork all those guys. And now, I mean, you know, the guy's hitting 35-foot jumpers, you know, like it's a foul shot. And that's because of the work that he puts in. And he's no different than anybody else, you know. I mean, but, you know, somebody who's maybe born with LeBron James gifts or, you know, and that's where you see it. I think a guy like Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan had that killer instinct that a lot of guys don't have, that I don't think LeBron James or Dwight Howard have, because they were born with such gifts that they never had to, you know, up until they got to this point, they never really had to struggle. Right. But, you know, 99% of us, we're those guys that have to struggle, you know what I mean? So you have to work 10 times as hard as if you want to be on the same playing field as those guys.
Right. We can't be all born the size of Andre the Giant or Kevin Nash or Shaquille O'Neal. The reason those guys stand out is because most of us will never be that. Sure.
And that's the thing that, like, kills me. You know, you see an average size guy with a gimmick that 14 other people are doing, or, you know, oh, I'm going to do a gimmick it's just like Steve Austin. We're like, but there's already Steve Austin. You got to be something different, you know? Like, you can't just do what everybody else is doing. Like, I don't know. It's tricky. I wish that there was a way that you could get into, you know, just get people to understand some of the basics.
But it's the exact same problem in the music business, because once anybody has a hit song, everybody coming out thinks, I gotta make a song that sounds just like that because that's what's successful and I want to be successful. So they chuck creativity completely to the fucking curb and say, okay, let's get auto-tune. Let's make a song with a stupid hook that's about nothing and everybody's gonna love it. Because that worked for somebody else. They think they gotta do it too.
In their defense, though, I will say that a lot of times the gatekeepers of distribution tend to be very risk averse and very much that's what they want.
Yeah,
and that sort of hurts. But I think this time, now at this juncture in our life, like I could never get a wrestling comic through to anybody in comics, and Kickstarter made that happen for me. Like technology has made it so people can get their voice out into the world, but you still have to build an audience. But I mean, for comics, I mean, you could do web comics and build an audience that way, or you can do what I did and, go out and find a niche and market to that niche and build it outside of comics, which honestly I don't know anybody's ever done before, which I think is kind of neat to build a comic outside of comics.
And you're right. It's the same way with Bandcamp. You don't have to be signed to Sony or Def Jam or whoever. If you got a good project and you put the time and effort into it and you build your audience touring, you can release an album through Bandcamp and still do box office business.
Right. And that's the trick, is you got to build the audience. It's not, and that's what I think so many guys think they can just put a product out there and everybody's just going to come find it. But, the sort of the flip side to the fact that everybody can have a voice now is that everybody does have a voice. And so now you are one of millions instead of one of thousands, and it's so much harder to get people to pay attention. And that's why for me, that's why I travel to so many shows, because a personal connection is always going to win out over a tweet or a Facebook post. I mean, they say a tweet lasts 17 seconds now. So, I mean, how you even survive with that? So I think that, I think it's important. I think, building the audience is the most important thing you can do. And I think too many people take that for granted.
Right. And I also want to stress building the audience the right way, because as you said, you made a quality product, you've taken it around to different conventions, you've built up Kickstarter to the point where people know it and trust it now. But a lot of people will take shortcuts to try to get things noticed, like what's the most outrageous thing I can do, what's the most explosive thing I can say on Twitter, just to get enough notoriety to get whatever they're doing out there. I mean, you can sometimes achieve success with that, but it doesn't tend to pay off in the long run, because then people just see you as getting a cheap pop, I guess, to use a wrestling analogy for that. It's like, okay, it worked one time, but is it going to work the next time?
Sure. I mean, I see a lot of guys that I think they're like, oh, CM Punk's kind of a dick to people on Twitter. Maybe I'll do that, but it's not the same thing. You know what I mean? Like CM Punk is just who he is. I think that's his personality, and I personally, I like him, and he's a good dude and whatever. I'm not trying to, he's got that personality, and I think it is what it is. And I think if you try to copy that personality, you're just going to come off as like a negative jerk. And,
right.
So it's tough. I mean, I don't know. It's definitely a tough world out there. I think for anybody that's trying to make it in any form of entertainment, there's a million people who want your job. So I feel very grateful that we've been able to build what we've built from the ground up and to have it where it's at.
And that's why I say you've built up the reputation and people believe in you, because there are 25 days left to go in this campaign. Your goal was $10,000 to get the remastered edition, and you hit $13,000 with 25 days left to go. So that says people know you're not taking shortcuts and you've got quality.
Sure. And one of the other things is, I mean, this year is going to be the only year we do this, but we're going to do 2 Kickstarters this year. And then once this is done and this book is out, we'll be doing a Kickstarter for Volume 3 right away so we can get started on it. We have a ridiculous lineup for it. What we have confirmed so far is we have Mick Foley, Rey Mysterio, and Zack Sabre Jr. And I've got other names that aren't 100% confirmed. But, I mean, it's going to be by far the biggest lineup we've ever had. And I think it's really gonna knock people's socks off when they see it.
Well, I'm just fascinated by the fact Zack Sabre Jr. is involved, because before WrestleMania weekend, I had never really seen the guy. I knew him by reputation only. And then once I saw him work with Chris Hero at the WrestleCon Mercury Rising Super Show, I was like, this kid is the future. I'm seeing the future in front of me right now.
And well, part of my thinking is, if I've got Rey Mysterio and Mick Foley, what does adding another wrestler do? What does adding, another American wrestler do for me? Really not anything. I mean, you've got 2 of the most popular wrestlers in the history of the business on your book, so I thought, you know, I can put a popular British guy on here and maybe, you know, build an audience and, you know, build some audience in the UK too to help try to make this thing go worldwide. So, you know, there was a thought process there. I mean, aside from the fact that I'm an enormous fan of his work, I like him as a person, you know, and we're going to be working out our story actually at the next Evolve show in Queens.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's is that Evolve 61? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's in Queens. There's one in Baltimore, and then there's one in Queens, and I'm not 100% sure on the numbering. I know it's on May 7th.
Right.
But,
I think that is 61, and I think that's the one where they're going to have the 2 qualifying matches for the Global Cruiserweight Series.
Yes. That's definitely the show. And yeah, I mean, I like Evolve as a product. I like I very much like a lot of the talent that they have. I'm excited to see to Drew Gulak get a shot in the tournament. Drew, on occasion, has worn headlock shirts to the ring, which I'm always very grateful. Lindsay Dorado too has worn a headlock shirt to the ring, and so I feel like, you know, maybe we're helping. You know, if you want to get in the tournament, guys, you know, maybe you should
wear a headlock shirt.
Grab a shirt, you know.
Yeah, it can't hurt. Now, Lindsay Dorado, there seemed to be a little bit of confusion about him a couple of weeks ago because they announced that he was in the Global Cruiserweight Series, and he came back with a tweet like, that's news to me.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just knew that he was in it. I didn't.
Yeah, apparently he was not aware that he was in it. Apparently somebody at WWE saw a tape of him, recommended him to Triple H, and Triple H said put the kid in, and somehow the word never got back to him.
Ha! That's funny. Yeah, he's a good dude, and he's actually drawn into an early edition of Headlock. He's drawn into a single step in one of the wrestling scenes. I was always a big fan of him, and when he was working for Chyna, and he was on a team that won King of Trios, and he came out to the ring wearing a headlock shirt for the main event of the King of Trios, which I always thought was really, really cool, because back then, I mean, I didn't really have anybody attached to my book, you know, so I just think the guys that helped me out at the very, very beginning, you know, I'll always have a real soft spot for, because, you know, it's easier now when I got 20 different names attached and whatnot, and, you know, there's people that'll reach out to me that just want to talk to Jerry or whatever, but I think that, you know, the people that helped me out at the very, very beginning when I wasn't anybody and I didn't have anything, like, that's the stuff you try never to forget that.
Well, I can't say I was there at the very beginning, so I apologize for that. But I'm glad I got
in.
in.
You know me.
I'm glad I got in when I did, and I'm glad I'm going to continue on this journey with you going forward. So let's just
No,
quickly...
I'm super appreciative.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm super appreciative of anybody that helps me, and I don't mean to make that sound like I disparage anybody, but I mean, there's people, I guess, who turned me down, I guess, at the beginning, who, you know, didn't want to talk to us because I think we couldn't help them politically or whatever, and, you know, versus people who just didn't know about us and that have discovered us along the way. So, you know, we met a lot of resistance at the beginning from a lot of different people, and, you know, I try not to forget that stuff for, you know, down the road, and conversely, I try to help the people who helped me, you know, like I said, when I wasn't a thing.
All right. Well, I've got a few more questions when we get to the end to wrap it up, but I don't want to monopolize the whole conversation. Jason, I want you to get in a few questions if you have some.
Sure. Yeah. There's some that's kind of been sitting with me since you mentioned it there, Michael, when you were saying when you were originally going out to comic book producers and them telling you that the comic would never sell and that wrestling fans don't read. And one of the things that struck me is that all these comic book conventions, there are professional wrestlers that are at the conventions. One of my questions is, did you ever use that as a selling point for any of the people you're trying to market that to? And number two, did you go to conventions to hook up with some of the people that you've gotten involved with the project?
Yeah, I mean, that was always, I mean, it wasn't initially a selling point, but it became a selling point. Because when I started Headlock, the only wrestlers going to conventions were Virgil, really, and maybe, Greg Valentine and, Honky Tonk Man. So it wasn't, wrestlers at Comic-Con wasn't like a big thing then. And I'd like to think on some level that I have, kind of a hand in that, bringing them to shows and such. And then I did meet a lot of guys at shows. And interestingly, when I started, before I was hooked up with anybody, I had a table at San Diego Comic-Con, and Hurricane came and bought a book from me, and Rob Van Dam came and bought a book from me. And that's how we sort of started the process. I met Chris Daniels at a convention. I met Ken Anderson at a convention, and now, people know me, but, when I first started out, that's how I'd meet guys who were fans of comics, and they really liked what I was trying to do, and like, anything I can do to help you. So, and then once Kickstarter sort of became a potential avenue for us, then I took him up on it.
I think that's pretty cool that, Hurricane, the superhero gimmick in wrestling, was one of the first guys that approached you, and RVD, who's into comics too. But you had, was seeing on the Kickstarter page that you have Jerry Lawler doing the cover art for some of those. I think Stevie had mentioned that too. How did you get hooked up with him?
So it was kind of the craziest thing. I just emailed him through his website. And I forgot I did it after I did it because it was such a weird long shot. Because who answers their website email? You know what I mean? Like, you just don't think about it. Like a guy of that stature answering his own email, or, maybe he was going to go to a webmaster and then they'd be like, oh, I'll forward it on, and then whatever. So I just sent it off. And then I forgot I did it. And then one day, like 2 weeks later, I got an email saying, hey, Mike, I'd love to check out your work. Here's my address. Please mail me some books. So I was like, oh, all right. I still didn't think it was him. And, I just thought somebody's answering his email. So I put the stuff in the mail. And then maybe like 2 weeks after that, I get a phone call, and it's him. And obviously his voice is very distinctive, and I've been a wrestling fan my whole life. So, it's him. And it was insane to me, and we talked, and, we talked for almost an hour just about wrestling and comics, and, well, not about wrestling, but about comics and art and whatnot. And he's like, yeah, I'll totally do it for you. I'll do a cover for you. And then as we went on, he's the cover artist now. He's done, he does the covers to all my books. We do shows together. And one of the things that's really neat about it, and we sort of discovered this at a sort of organically at a panel in New York Comic-Con, but, one of the reason that he broke into wrestling was he sent artwork into the Memphis television studio, and they put it on the air. And then that led to them inviting him to the studio. And that, that started the chain of events that led to him becoming a professional wrestler. And he said, he goes, years ago, Lance Russell took a chance on me and put me on television. And, I was looking at your email, and I sort of had this thought, like, this is, here's a guy who's sort of in the position I was in, and here's my way to pay that forward. So, it was really a nice gesture. And, he's, sometimes I think people think they know people based on their television personas and stuff, but he's the nicest dude. I watch him do so many nice things for so many people. I've been to more art museums with him than any other human being on earth, which I think is kind of neat. And, I'd never be where I was without him lending his talents to my project. And, he's super famous. He's obviously got money. Like, he didn't have to do any of it, and he's done it all, and he's gone above and beyond to make my project a success. And, I'd never be able to pay him back for, what he's done for me.
Definitely nice to have a big name like him involved with that, and the publicity that goes with that. One more question I want to ask before I throw this back to Stevie. A while back on the show, we had another comic book guy come on, Scott Lost, and I see he's featured as a contributor on your site there. What's his involvement been in the process?
So Scott did a pinup in the very first book, A Single Step. It was his first published comic book work, and he did a pinup in the Last Territory Volume 1 book, and he's doing a pinup now in this remastered version. I think it'd be kind of neat to have him. He's going to draw the same character that he drew in the first book, just to show how far he's come. And that's part of one of the things that I'm showcasing with the book is just sort of how far we've come, over the years. And the guys that are, in addition to Scott, having the guys involved that we have, Joe and the Bucks and MVP, were chosen very specifically just because those are three guys that sort of succeeded despite conventional wisdom. They did what they wanted to do their way and dug in their heels. And that's what we did. And so that's why those particular guys were, sort of recruited for this particular book. And Scott does his own comic book now, called The Second Shift. And, whenever I'm on the West Coast, I see him, he comes to my table, I let him come set up at my table at San Diego Comic-Con and I have some space for him. And, I try to help him and, highlight him and stuff because he's a good dude and he's a good artist. And, I just like to see him, I'd like to see him grow.
Jason, were you kicking it back to me then, or?
Yeah, you can go ahead. Those were the questions that I had for Michael there.
Okay, I figured you were going to segue back to me, so I was just waiting. But it's cool, though, because I'm glad you brought up Scott Lost. Coincidentally enough, that is like days apart when I got the package for Headlock The Last Territory. I also got the package for The Second Shift. So for all the people out there that are skeptical about Kickstarter, you really do get these things. I know there have been a lot of video games that have taken in millions of dollars and never put out anything, but these are two projects that I personally can attest to. I backed them and I got them.
There's a ton of, unfortunately, I think people tend to want excuses for not donating, I think. And yeah, there's been some high profile Kickstarters that haven't panned out, but there's obviously a ton of people who have been funded and produced, really cool stuff. And I think especially now for guys like Scott and myself, we're multi-time users of it. I think he's run 2, I'm on my 3rd, and it's cake to just do it. And it works for us as a pre-order mechanism, and it allows us to put our stuff out into the world.
All right. Well, to bring it around full circle with the remastering of A Single Step, out of all these pledge levels, I know some of them are gone and no longer available, but which of the ones for somebody that's just looking to dip their foot in the waters and hasn't backed it before, what do you recommend for them?
Well, I have tiers for just about everything. So, it really depends on people's level of interest. If you want digital comics, there's tiers you can pledge and get our first digital comic. Or there's tiers where you can get multiple digital comics. That's the same with, the print versions. Obviously the main event tier is the tier to get the book that we're funding now, which is the first book in the series. And that's a good way to get started, but you can get all the books we've done. You can get all the books done signed by Jerry and me. You can get, we have a limited tier of all the books signed by just about all the creators, the famous creators that have been a part of it. And then the one thing I always stress to people is that the books we sell on Kickstarter, or the books we offer on Kickstarter, are not available anywhere else. We want to make sure that the people get the best book possible. So you can't get the book. If you buy the book from me at a show, it's going to have 5 chapters of Headlock and, probably a pinup. But, the books we sell through Kickstarter have all the wrestler content. So, if you want to read the Samoa Joe story, the MVP story, the Young Bucks stories, like those are only available through Kickstarter. You can't get those from me at a show. You can't get them off my website. We're really serious about wanting people to understand how important Kickstarter is to our project. And anything we make extra goes right back into the book. Like I said, I have another Kickstarter coming, so you know what I mean? If we tear it up on this Kickstarter and end up at a really high number, it's less money I need to ask for the next one. I don't ever take any money out of it. I have a job that pays my bills, and every dime I make on Headlock goes right back into the book. If I write it for 10 years and I don't ever make a penny and I don't ever lose a penny, I'm the happiest dude alive. So, it's just something that I love doing, and it's something I want to keep, just keep doing as long as people will allow me to do it.
All right. Well, on that note, I want to say that there are many ways you can keep up on the progress of this current campaign and any future campaigns, but I'm going to start by saying follow Michael on Twitter at HeadlockComic. What else do you want to say for people to follow this?
All of our social media is Headlock Comic, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, I think, is Headlock Comic Book, but everything else is Headlock Comic. I'm not super good with the Tumblr, so, but yeah, that's the best way. People can find me on Facebook, usually my profile picture or something Headlock related, where I'm headed to next or whatever. I'm pretty open to accepting friends as long as you're not weird. And, I always try to offer advice to people that are trying to break into comics just because I've made all the mistakes and whatnot. I'm not always, sometimes I can be a little harsh because sometimes that's what people need to hear. But, if you want an honest assessment of stuff, hit me up and I'll be glad to give people advice. I just love interacting with people, and I love all the support that everybody's shown us, it's been a long road, but I'm really, really happy with what we've built, and I'm really, really happy with where we're at.
I'm really, really happy with what I've backed and what I've gotten, and I'm going to continue to be a backer, and I hope people who listen to this will consider that as well. And if they have any doubts, they should just go ahead and go to the Kickstarter link right there in the description of this show and look at it for themselves and realize what the quality is and what's coming out and why it's a wrestling comic book for wrestling fans. I mean, I don't know if I can put it any more simply than that. If you love wrestling, that's why you're listening to this show, and you're going to love the comic book for the exact same reason.
I couldn't agree with more. But but beyond that too, I don't think you have to be a boxing fan to appreciate Rocky. It's an entertaining story. It's a kid coming of age in the wrestling business, and there's a lot of other elements to it. I think there's a little something for everybody. So if you're a process junkie and you're into the how-to stuff, that might interest you. I think people like cable dramas, and there's a little bit of something for everybody in it. And I think even people who don't like wrestling could find some enjoyment, and they have found enjoyment in the book.
Yeah, pretty much the opposite of the Warrior comic book. May he rest in peace. But that was like the comic book made for comic fans that no comic book fan or wrestling fan ever wanted to read. It took it in the exact opposite direction. It was something for nobody.
Yeah, no, wrestling comics has got a rough history, so we're hoping to change that.
Well, you're reinventing the wheel right now, you and Scott. So I want to congratulate you both on doing that, and thank you so much for being on the show again tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate that.
It's our pleasure, Michael. You're welcome back anytime, and I'll be talking to you again soon, I'm sure.
Most definitely.
All right. Take it easy. Have a great night.
You too.
All right. That was Michael Kingston from Headlocked, who is just now doing a single step remastered on Kickstarter. Everybody go to check out that link, or go to Kickstarter and type in Headlock Comic. You'll find it. No problem. It's out there. It's available, but it's a great project. I hope everybody backs it. And now we transition from that to talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling, because I know that Jason wanted to preview the Road to Duntaku.
Yeah, we have actually two shows coming up, one Saturday, one Sunday. Both are taking place at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. local time in Roppongi in Tokyo. But yeah, interesting about these cards is that the opening card matches, the first two matches, to me, are a lot more interesting than some of the ones that are coming later. But I know Stevie was looking at this and wanting to talk about this last week. We didn't get to it. But yeah, why don't I just start with the Saturday card for April the 23rd. And go from there. We'll go over that card. We'll go over the Sunday, the 24th card, too. But, yeah, starting on Saturday, we have an opening match, a six-man tag team match. Ryusuke Taguchi, Tiger Mask, and Manabu Nakanishi taking on what probably is one of my favorite trios in all of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Gato, Beretta, and Rocky Romero. So we got Gato, kind of the clown prince there of Chaos, with his sometimes Chaos tag team mates there, Beretta and Rocky Romero, Roppongi Vice.
That should be a barn burner. No question about it.
To be comedy gold, especially with Taguchi on the other side. There's just so much they can work with there. And yeah, with Nakanishi too, being in there, being just kind of a brute that Gato can run away from, or that, Beretta can run away for, that Rocky Romero can do that spot where he's kind of hanging in the ropes and Nakanishi can just kind of nail him and throw him to the outside of the ring. But definitely, anytime Roppongi Vice is in the ring, it's a win for New Japan, and I don't mind them being in the first match. That's a wonderful way to start off the card.
No doubt about it. I mean, Roppongi Vice and Roppongi, it just has to happen anyway. It's just a given. It's
gonna be a good match, and I'm interested in the match after that too, simply because we have two up-and-coming Gaijin Young Lions, David Finlay and Jay White, teaming up, taking on the former IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Champions Tomoaki Honma and Togi Makabe. And I'd really like to see Finlay and White go over in this one, see them get a push. without the tag team titles, there's not really any reason to kind of push this ragtag thrown together tag team of Tomoaki Honma and Togi Makabe. And with the stars of David Finlay and Jay White rising, this is the time where I think you need to give them a win and have them go over some marquee guys that used to hold the tag title to give them some credibility.
Right, and they're walking that fine line right now between making people want them to go over and waiting too long for them to go over. It's a very fine window between making a star and missing the boat on making a star, and I'm with Jason on this one. The time is now.
Yeah, and lately they've been putting David Finlay and Jay White in singles matches against each other, so it's good to see them teaming up, and hopefully they'll get the win here. In our next match, the titles are not on the line, but we have the new tag champs, Tongaroa and Tama Tonga, taking on Juice Robinson and Captain New Japan, and I think we all know how this is going to
Captain New Japan.
Captain fucking New Japan is going to be counting the lights in this one. There's just no doubt about it. That's why he's there.
That's what he does. He is the designated jobber of New Japan.
Yeah, he is, and
let me use the word carpenter, because I just watched the Hall of Fame speech the other day, and they talked about that. Carpenters are guys who built us up. Yeah, that's Captain Falk in New Japan. He's a carpenter.
And normally I would say, okay, the tag titles aren't on the line, so there might be some shenanigans, but then again, Captain New Japan isn't a guy like Toru Yano who's going to low blow while the referee's back is turned and schoolboy somebody for a victory, and neither is Juice Robinson, so. Yeah, when Captain New Japan is involved, he's eating the pin, and I don't see any deviation from that formula for this match whatsoever. Your champs are going over.
No, it's not time to pull out the Mulkey swerve. Not yet, not here, not now.
Nope. And then another tag team match after that, we have Kushida teaming up with Katsuyori Shibata, taking on the team of Jushin Liger and Yuji Nagata. And again, I think this is one that Kushida and Shibata need to win, with their stars being on the rise, with Kushida holding the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title and Shibata holding the Never Openweight title. And Nagata's a seasoned veteran, Liger is a seasoned veteran, and them putting over Kushida and Shibata would definitely help the credibility of each of those wrestlers.
No. There's one thing I will say, that we don't want to get a little too predictable with this new stars on the rise, old lions stepping aside formula. If you do that too much and it becomes predictable and stale, you're going to lose out on some of your audience believing in what you're doing. And New Japan is one of the most believable products in all of pro wrestling right now. So every now and then, the old lions do need to stand up and say, it's not your turn yet, kid.
If it goes that way, I'd like to see Nagata turn into Demon Nagata and have those eyeballs roll into the back of his head and slap the Nagata lock on. Oh, either one. I mean, either both Kushida and Shibata are submission artists, but to see Nagata win by submission over either one of them I would be okay with that. I just don't want to see Jushin Liger pulling out some kind of bullshit win over either of the guys.
No, if it was either one of the two, I'd want Nagata to be the one to do it. I'm with you on that.
So yeah, I still, my believability is with Kushida and Shibata. Stevie's is kind of on the other side, but
I'm not saying that's what I think should happen. I'm just saying let's not rule it out.
True. Okay. Fair enough. Not saying it's going to happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility with the way that New Japan is booked and has been booked traditionally.
Exactly. Just like every now and then in the G1 Climax, you have a match that ends in 2 minutes. It's once in a while you got to do that to remind people, hey, it's not all classics that go 15, 20 minutes with a 5-star finish. Sometimes somebody just gets pinned on a simple move and a roll-up.
Yep. Yeah, that happens, and That could happen here, and I hope it's not some kind of 2-minute bullshit schoolboy roll-up from Jushin Thunder Liger, but
I hope not either.
We'll see. There's some interesting undertones in the semi-main event on the card. It's for the Never Six-Man title. The new champions Yoshitatsu, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Michael Elgin are taking on a Bullet Club team, kind of a mixed Bullet Club team of Kenny Omega, Bad Luck Fale, and Yujiro Takahashi. And it'll be interesting to watch this to see if there is any kind of tension, any kind of signs of an impending split between Omega and Fale and Takahashi, any, dissension in the ranks between the old Bullet Club and the new Elite. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in this match. I don't think there's going to be a title change with that ragtag 6-man team thrown together, but I said the same thing about Yoshitatsu, Tanahashi, and Elgin, so you never know. They have been hot-shotting the 6-man title.
Now, did you see the story today that Kenny Omega is on the Ring of Honor radar.
No, I didn't see that story.
Yeah, it seems like talent is flowing both ways right now. Like when Elgin's contract was up with Ring of Honor, he got signed full-time to New Japan. Well, now they're kind of looking at it from the other direction like, we'd really like this Kenny Omega guy to be on more of our shows.
And I'm glad they have a good working relationship because you got guys like Tomohiro Ishii that hold the ROH TV title, and you've got guys like Red Dragon that come in from ROH and have won the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championships in the past too, and guys like the Briscoes who have come in and worked shows, and guys like Cheeseburgers. So it's good to have a working relationship. It's good to have titles that kind of flow back and forth too. And yeah, hopefully if Omega does go to ROH, he would still make some appearances in New Japan because he would be sorely missed.
I think they would definitely do that. It like I said, it seems like it's flowing both ways right now, which is why in very short order we're going to have the ROH Global Wars shows. That's big pay-per-views coming up, and they've announced like a match every single day all week long for that show.
When is that coming up?
I believe the first one is May 8th. Let me just pull up the card here because they have stacked the hell out of it. I don't mean to interrupt Dontaku, but I figure since I'm already talking about it, why not go there? So first they gotta go.
So might as well finish off the thought here and see who's on the cards because if it is Global Wars, there may be some New Japan guys on the card.
There's no shortage of guys on the card. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Here it is. We got the World Championship match, Jay Lethal versus Colt Cabana. Obviously, Cabana's going to be a huge hometown favorite because this show is in Chicago Ridge. And believe you me, it's tempting me to go, but it's not going to work in my schedule. Sadly. But we've also got the Addiction versus Jushin Liger and Cheeseburger. The TV championship is on the line. Tomohiro Ishii is challenged by Bobby Fish. There's a tag team title match, War Machine versus the Briscoes. And there's more that's not even listed here in front of me, but they've been adding names like every single day, and a bunch of New Japan names have been among them.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me Fish was challenging Ishii for the ROH TV title. My first thought was, Bobby Fish, good luck hitting that Avalanche Falcon Arrow on a guy like Ishii. Good luck getting him up for that. That is a test of strength in and of itself.
But good luck to Cheeseburger getting anything over on Kazarian or Daniels, because I just see them beating the living hell out of him.
I am just completely marking out the Cheeseburger and the guy that he has idolized in Jushin Liger are teaming up and forming a tag team. That just makes me happy as a wrestling fan.
Exactly. There's a million reasons to order that pay-per-view, but that one might be one of the best.
Just to see the two of them team up again. I don't think they've worked together since that Battle Royal at Wrestle Kingdom 10 in January.
Exactly. So a chance to relive the dream, so to speak.
So yeah, definitely check out Global Wars from ROH.
But back to Dontaku.
The first, Saturday's main event is an 8-man tag team match. We have Chaos taking on Los Ingobernables de Japan. We have Yoshihashi, Hiroki Goto, Kazuchika Okada, and Tomohiro Ishii taking on Bushi, Evil, Tetsuya Naito, and Sanada, the newest member of Los Ingobernables de Japan. And I have to say, I'm just kind of lukewarm for this. It's not really gelling for me. There's feuds that are developing. Sanada just kind of came in, and it seemed like more of the same that we've seen with Okada taking on Bullet Club way back in the day with AJ Styles and the numbers game coming into play and costing him the title and him chasing, and it kind of seems more like the same now, where it was a 4-on-1 situation with Sanada making his debut that cost Okada the title, and now we're having the factions kind of face off, and hopefully it won't be a clusterfuck, but it could turn into one.
I just want to say on a complete side note here, how happy I am with the career trajectory of Seiya Sanada up to this point. Starting out in All Japan, which has, for all intents and purposes, become the little brother right now. They used to be really big. They're not so big anymore, but it was a good place for him to get his start in the world of professional wrestling. Wrestle One, which has always done some interesting things. And then to me, he kind of took a career step back when he used the Wrestle One relationship with TNA to get into TNA for a while. And it's not like he wasn't capable of great things. It's just TNA was not capable of booking him to do anything other than Destination X here and there and a little bit of this and that. But they didn't use him to the potential that I believe New Japan is going to use him now.
Yeah, it's not that Sonata's not capable of good things. It's that TNA is not capable of good things. Look what they did with Kazuchika Okada. Point taken.
Exactly my point. So I feel like him being the newest member of Los Ingobernables de Japón, I think that's just spelling good things for him going forward.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. We'll see how that goes forward. They're trying to play out, each individual member having a feud with one of the members of Chaos. So we'll see how that goes. It's kind of starting to be cohesive and starting to gel, but it's not quite there yet. And hopefully these two shows can kind of set things in motion so things will kind of boil over and come to a head at Dontaku proper when the actual pay-per-view takes place.
Indeed. I 100% agree.
But yeah, let's move on to Sunday's card. We have another card at bright and early at 5:30 a.m. Sunday morning.
To channel Abby, I have to say it's at stupid o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's an hour after what we traditionally think of stupid o'clock, but that's only because we've set our clocks forward. We sprung ahead. But it's still the same time in Tokyo. It's still 6:30 in the evening, which is stupid o'clock here. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you slice it. And much like the Saturday card, the Sunday card, the opening matches look fantastic, and the later ones are kind of iffy. Starting things off, as I said, they've had this series going on in New Japan for some time, and Jay White owns it. We have Jay White taking on David Finlay, and will David Finlay, the king of uppercut, finally get a win in this series? We will see. That is your opening match on Sunday, and those two can put on a barn burner, especially for opening matches. And yeah, they give 110% every time they go out there, and I'm really looking forward to that opening match. That makes it worth getting up at 5:30 in the morning to watch.
I agree. They're your pot of coffee. You won't even need anything else.
Exactly. I mean, it's so much better than having, Captain New Japan or Jushin Liger and Tiger Mask out there first. We've got two guys that are going full force, two up and coming young lions. It's worth it. It's what makes New Japan New Japan.
Yes.
And second on the card, guess who we have? We have Roppongi Vice, Beretta, and Rocky Romero. This time they're teaming with Tacos, Mr. Yoshihashi. They're taking on Captain fucking New Japan, Ryusuke Taguchi, and Tiger Mask. And yeah, Captain fucking New Japan is eating the pin in this one too.
Once again, that's his role. That's what we love about him.
It's like, I need to make a t-shirt of Captain New Japan just lying on his back with the caption, "That's what I do."
Oh, speaking of making t-shirts, I know nobody else saw this, so totally random, and I apologize to people who can't see it, but your Kana shirt was awesome.
I'll have to put that up on Twitter. I sent it to at Asuka WWE a few days ago, but yeah, I'll have to throw it on my Twitter feed tonight after the show is over. But yeah, yesterday I made a very awesome Asuka shirt because that's one of the few WWE wrestlers I'm actually interested in at the moment. And yeah, her match at NXT TakeOver, taking the title away from Bayley, was nothing short of phenomenal, and is probably in my top 5 matches of 2016.
Yeah, you don't even have to tell me because I was there.
You were there live, but yeah, I will definitely throw a picture of that up because I do have my Roppongi Vice shirts and my Chaos shirts and my Okada shirt that I put pictures of on Twitter, so I'll have to put that up in my feed proper after the show tonight so people can check out the Asuka shirt I made.
Speaking of which, have you noticed that lately people have gotten really anal about the pronunciation of her name?
I don't know. It's just kind of one of those things like Shinsuke where you have a very short U.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Asuka. It's like there's almost no U. There's just kind of a little swing. I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah, it's like Ryusuke Taguchi, kind of like that. I guess he's got a little U because it's after the U, but like Shinsuke Nakamura. You're not saying Shinsuke.
Right, but I don't want to say I don't agree with pronouncing it the right way, but I also heard Brian Alvarez make a good point about this where he said, we don't get people over there in Japan correcting the way to pronounce English wrestlers' names. Why is it such a big deal for English speakers to be corrected on the way they pronounce Japanese names? Like, watch a few of the shows and you'll learn the right way to say it even if you didn't say it right the first time.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I guess from watching enough Japanese wrestling, I just know how to say it. It's just Asuka.
Right. And that's what I'm saying too, is like, instead of driving people away by constantly correcting their pronunciation, maybe give them a chance to watch a few shows and get to learn the names.
And if you really, really are having trouble with it, just call her Kana.
Exactly. Well, sometimes I fall back on that just because I don't want to get yelled at if I say Asuka instead.
Asuka, yes. Shinsuke, as Jim Ross likes to say on the Access TV show.
But see, I don't even, that's why I said, I think this whole thing about pronunciation has gotten a little too anal retentive. Like, sometimes wrestling fans actually drive away potential wrestling fans by being such sticklers about these things.
I'm not really anal retentive about it. I just kind of laugh about it when I hear it, especially from a guy like Jim Ross who should know better. It's just kind of like, oh, good old Jim.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something to get down on. It's just something to kind of chuckle at. It's just like, Shinsuke.
And sometimes it's just the accent, too. I mean, he's got an Oklahoma drawl. It's the way he's going to say certain things.
Shinsuke Nakamura with the bomb, eh?
Well, it's not quite that excessive, but I get what you're going for.
No, but hyperbole always makes things better.
Right. So, back to the second card.
So we have Beretta, Rocky Romero, Yoshihashi taking on Captain New Japan, Ryosuke Taguchi, and Tiger Mask, and we know Captain New Japan's laying down. We got another 6-man tag team match after that. We have Jushin Liger, Manabu Nakanishi, and Yuji Nagata taking on Juice Robinson, Kushida, and Katsuyori Shibata. And this match just doesn't excite me all that much.
Okay.
It's just you've got Nakanishi and Nagata who are a tag team, but you're throwing them in there with Liger, which is kind of a clash in styles, and you have Kushida and Shibata
clash
who are teaming up
in
the night
styles.
before.
I see what you did there. Very,
you
very
see what
clever.
I do there, clash in styles. But yeah, I mean it's kind of a clash in styles. You have Kushida and you have Shibata who are teaming up the night before, but then throwing in Juice Robinson in the mix. It's just kind of like, There just doesn't seem to be anything at stake in this match, and it just seems like it's going to be a letdown after Roppongi Vice is in the ring.
Well, hard to argue with that,
but they need filler, and Nagata, Nakanishi, and Liger are huge draws. Kushida's your IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, Shibata's your never openweight champion, so it's just going to kind of be there.
It's stuff for people to do.
It's your breather match. It's where you can catch your breath after the action that Roppongi Vice will have from the match before it. And the match that precedes it, where we have kind of what I would consider an A-list tag team match. We have Gato teaming up with Kazuchika Okada, taking on the Los Ingobernables de Japón team of Bushi and Sonata. Now that should be interesting. You've got
Oh, sorry. Why is it even to this day when I hear either of their names, and I know they're both bookers and don't wrestle as a team anymore, but I always think of Jado and Gato as a team every time I hear either of their names.
Yeah, it's just, Jado's, busy booking over in Noah, and I mean, it was nice watching them on the, they actually teamed with Roppongi Vice. You can see this on New Japan World on the We Are Suzuki-gun pay-per-view, and watching Jado and Gato team with Roppongi Vice was just comedy gold.
Yes. But
and it was just beautiful.
I think it must be Wrestling Society X that forever burned in my brain that the two of them were a team.
Yeah, I watched them, back in the day in FMW. I really liked the match where they came over to ECW and had a really hard-fought match against the Impact players. They didn't end up winning the ECW tag titles, but it's a match that, to this day sticks in my mind, especially that double flip-off jawbreaker, which was awesome.
Right, yes. So, sorry, I kind of derailed the combo there. I apologize.
No problem, but yeah, I like this. You kind of got like the A-lister himself of Chaos, Kazuchika Okada, and, his mentor Gato taking on the two newest members of Los Ingobernables de Japón and Bushi and Sonata. So it's interesting to get the new blood in there against some of the more established and over guys from Chaos. And, maybe we'll see Okada and Sonata develop something. I don't think we're going to see much of Gato in singles action, but maybe we'll see a further feud between Bushi and Okada. We'll just have to see what comes out of it. But I do like to see the two newer members of Los Ingobernables taking on the A-listers there from Chaos.
I feel like you're playing fantasy booker for me when you're talking about Sonata possibly having a beef with Okada. That's just something I want to see right now. But I know they need to build it up for a while to make it interesting to everybody and not just me.
They would, and I would much rather see that than I'd rather see a program between Sonata and Okada than I would between Okada and Bushi, just because Bushi looks just goddamn ridiculous with the eyeliner and the crushed velvet and the Party City dollar store sky and the laser fingers that he has, where Sonata just, is a legitimate badass.
Right, but I feel like you're channeling Abby again. Like every now and then we got to get Abby into the podcast some way, somehow, and you just did it right there.
There you go. Yeah, I can cut down Bushi with his stupid Bushi and his crushed velvet and his stupid skies
Bushi and his stupid velvet.
Stupid laser fingers. But yeah, Sonata is a legitimate badass and definitely an infusion of new blood. I mean, he has just come into New Japan, and Kazuchika Okada definitely is in dire need of new guys to wrestle, and Sonata is one of those. So I would love to see a program with them going forward, because I think that's a story that has not been told and one that could go on for quite some time.
Amen.
You know, maybe we can build to that. Maybe not for Dontaku, but maybe down the road for Dominion or something. One of the pay-per-views coming up after that.
I agree.
But yeah, moving on, we have a tag team match after that. We have the B team, I guess you could say, for Chaos, Hiroki Goto and Tomohiro Ishii taking on, I guess, Team A2 of Los Ingobernables de Japón. We have King of Darkness, Evil, and Tetsuya Naito.
You know, it's kind of funny when you can talk about them as the A2 team and the B team when any of these guys would be upper mid-card anywhere else.
So yeah, my bad. I was talking about Evil in the last match, but it was actually Bushi who was in the last match. So it's the stupid crushed velvet in this one. Bushi's the one who spits mist on people, but whatever. I still don't want to see Okada versus Bushi. I still want to see Okada versus Sonata.
All right, well, we'll accept
the outcome does not change.
Right. I accept the correction, and I also apologize because I was rolling with you. I didn't have the card in front of me, so I just accepted it.
But yeah, I think with Los Ingobernables, you do have an A1 and an A2 team if you're breaking it up in terms of Tetsuya Naito on one team and Sonata on the other team. Granted, if you've got Bushi and Evil teaming together, that's going to be your B team. But yeah, I think you've got your A team and your A1 team with Naito on one team and Sonata on the other.
I think that's fair.
But yeah, I mean, they've kind of crossed up, and we have Ishii wanting to take on Naito now, and Goto kind of in a feud with Evil, which doesn't really sit right with me. I really liked what happened at the New Japan Cup, especially in the build-up to it, where Ishii and Evil had some really good programs together, but I guess Naito needs some challengers for his newly won IWGP heavyweight title, and Ishii is going to be the next guy for that. So I'm sure they're going to tease that to no end in this tag team match.
You know, you just reminded me of something that drives me up a wall about WWE, and you weren't even trying to, but you did.
And what's that?
It's that this idea that when new champions come along and they have a title and they've achieved something, that everybody wants to take that achievement away from them, that people just line up to challenge them. You know, friends, enemies, everybody in New Japan is like, you got something I want, and we're not going to let you just stand here and bask in your glory. We're going to come and try to take it from you.
Well, it wasn't quite like that with the New Japan title change, though. What happened was, after Naito had won the match, and it was a 4-on-1. All four of them were beating down on Kazuchika Okada, and it was Tomohiro Ishii who came out to make the save for his fellow Chaos stablemate Okada, which shocked the hell out of me because there's never ever been any kind of solidarity or having each other's back in Chaos, but I liked it. I'm just saying it never happened. But yeah, him coming out and making the save and then kind of in the heat of the moment challenging Naito for the title seems to make more sense than, I just want to take your title away. This was like, no, you're messing with my boy. This 4-on-1 shit isn't going to fly. You and me, buddy. I'm the big guy. I am the Stone Pitbull. I am the enforcer. You're going to face me.
Right. I accept your way of paraphrasing it here, but I'm also saying that just in general, I find New Japan lends more credence to their titles by having more people want their titles. It's like, If some of the bottom card WWE guys would just suddenly say, hey, I want to challenge for the Intercontinental title, then at least, A, they'd have something to do, and B, you'd have a reason to care about that title because you'd see it being defended.
And let me put it to you this way in terms of the IWGP heavyweight title. Tetsuya Naito is the first guy since 2011 not named Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kazuchika Okada, or AJ Styles to hold that title.
Right. It is freshening up that title scene.
It's freshening it up, but at the same time, it is a title that New Japan holds in such high esteem that only a select few get to hold that title, and when they get to hold that title, they tend to hold that title for a long time. It's not a belt that gets hot-shotted back and forth and everybody in the company holds.
Right. It's not like pushing somebody off a ladder and then the next day pinning the same person you pushed off the ladder to win the title. It doesn't flip-flop in a day.
And while we're talking about this, I do want to sidetrack just for a moment about the IWGP title and something that could have happened on Raw but didn't, and I'm almost sad that it didn't. Roman Reigns had a beautiful chance to just bury AJ Styles on the mic by bad-mouthing that he was the IWGP title and that the IWGP title doesn't mean shit compared to the WWE title. I mean, I know that WWE doesn't like to acknowledge other promotions, but I just thought that would be a great way to get some heel heat too, but a great way to kind of throw that WWE company line up there that, our title is the best title and these other titles out there don't mean shit.
Well, total segue here since we've already gone into that, but how do you feel right now about this whole, we're not really here to reform the Bullet Club, we're just here to sow the seeds of chaos thing that Anderson and Gallows are doing?
What I would really like to see, it's like I almost think the swerve of, I always think that AJ, them turning on AJ with AJ not knowing that they were going to attack Roman is almost too easy, even for WWE. I don't see them turning on AJ because it's just too expected. It's another one of those things where try as you may, I don't know if they're trying to keep Roman Reigns as a face or have him be a tweener or have him be a heel, but even if you have Anderson and Gallows come out during the match at Payback, help AJ Styles win by cheating, AJ is going to be over huge. AJ Styles is one of these guys like RVD that the fans are going to cheer even if you try to turn him heel.
And it's not going to work if you have it be a heel tactic because people dislike Roman so much right now that if Anderson and Gallows interfere, they're just going to be uproariously cheered.
Exactly. That's just adding fuel to the fire. You could even put, somebody out there that the fans like. Say you had somebody like, I don't know, like a Seth Rollins coming back with the title. You could have Anderson and Gallows interfere. There might be some boos, but they'd still be cheering Styles getting the title too.
Exactly. So it's hard to see where they're going with it. That's going to work in the way that it's being presented at the moment. But
the only way I can see them turning on AJ Styles would be if they pulled the trigger and brought Finn Balor up, but I don't see that happening.
I secretly suspect that somewhere along the line he's got to play into this. But you're right.
He does, but yeah, at the same time, yeah, he's holding the NXT title. For one, I can't see them bringing him up and doing that. And for two, continuity has never been, especially continuity from another promotion in New Japan, is something that WWE doesn't give a shit about. They don't care that Anderson and Gallows kicked AJ Styles out of the Bullet Club. If they think they can make a buck off of marketing the Bullet Club with Anderson, Gallows, and Styles together as a team, they're going to do it. Continuity be damned.
How long are they going to be able to get away with this hashtag Bullet Club thing before New Japan just slaps a cease and desist on them?
Well, the one thing that I'm noticing is they're not saying it on TV. It's only happening on social media, is it not?
Right. I noticed they've been pretty careful about that too.
So, I don't know if you could, I think the only reason they're getting away with it is because it's being promoted that way on social media, but nowhere through official channels have they been called the Bullet Club. It's like hashtag Bullet Club on Twitter, but it's being said by individuals and not by WWE as a company.
Right. And I did read somewhere, I think I might have even reported it, that New Japan holds the 100% exclusivity to the trademark in Japan, but not necessarily in North America. So there might be a workaround with that.
Well, we'll have to see going forward. But especially with Bullet Club still being an active faction within New Japan Pro Wrestling,
right?
I can't see that New Japan would do anything but fight tooth and nail if WWE were to use that name in their programming.
Or the minute they put it on a T-shirt at WWE shop, then I would come after them guns blazing, no pun intended.
Oh yeah, New Japan has quite a large financial backer that the owner Bushiroad, they have quite deep pockets and they could certainly afford lawyers for an international copyright lawsuit.
Yes, indeed. So,
and I think it would be worth it because that is a hot property, that is a hot commodity, and that is something that, yes, New Japan should fight tooth and nail and hold on to.
Yes, Bullet Club 2016 is akin to New World Order 1996. You don't want to let that go.
maybe 1998, but yeah, it's not quite as fresh as it was in say 2014, 2015 a little bit, but I mean it's still a draw. It's still something that the casual fan is now catching on to. It's like the hardcores and the diehards have caught on, and we have our Bullet Club merch already. But yeah, it's something that the fans now, with guys like AJ Styles, who are just finding out now who Anderson and Gallows are and going back and looking at the matches, however they can find them online, legally or illegally, and going, oh yeah, the Bullet Club, look at that. That's kind of like the NWO.
Yeah, I'm just totally glad they haven't acknowledged that he used to be Festus. Like, thank you for not mentioning that. I know you've got WWE fans that would figure that out if they looked at him for long enough, but as long as you don't say it, it's okay.
I'm glad they didn't too, because yeah, he was Festus, but he actually has a physique now. He's not built like a bag of milk.
Yeah, or a shambling pile of clay.
And yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, when they are a tag team, are they going to do the face paint again? I would love to see Gallows do that face paint, because that got over in Japan. Mm-hmm. But we'll see.
We'll see. Sorry, totally sidetracked us with WWE New Japan talk there, but
there's crossover there, so it's. I mean, we're talking about the IWGP title anyway, so it kind of needed to be brought up, and it has been brought up. So we'll move right on to the main event of Sunday's card. We have a 10-man tag team match, and yeah, this is going to be a clusterfuck. We have Yoshitatsu, Tomoaki Hanma, Togi Makabe, Hiroshi Tanahashi, stupid Tana, stupid braids, stupid hair, stupid air guitar. That's for you, Abby. And Michael Elgin taking on the Bullet Club team of Yujiro Takahashi, Tangaroa, Tamatanga, Bad Luck Fale, and Kenny Omega. And yeah, honestly, after seeing Naito and Evil taking on Ishii and Goto, I don't think there's much that can top the two matches before that with Gato and Okada versus Bushi and Sonata. It's kind of like, oh yeah, the Bullet Club is still here, but it's a thrown together Bullet Club team, and it's a thrown together New Japan team, and it's a main event, and it's a 10-man tag team match.
All I can say is Kokeshi headbutts for everyone.
Oh, there'll be at least 3 or 4 missed Kokeshi headbutts.
No, I don't want them to miss. Like, just go ahead and hit it.
Yeah, go ahead and hit it, but that's just the way that Hanma matches work out. It's always like the first 3 or 4 he misses.
I know.
So that is the action that is coming up there for Road to Dontaku for this weekend. You can catch my reviews for it going up right after the show goes off the air on AngryMarks.com. You can catch my recaps of that.
Yes, indeed. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. I don't mean to yawn on you. It's not what you're saying. It's just getting the news very early this morning about Chyna, and then right after that, Prince. It's been a long day
Prince,
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that Google even changed their logo to Purple Rain when you go to their homepage now.
Which is cool. Yeah, one of my friends pointed that out, and I said I like that, but Paisley would have been acceptable too.
Yeah, I sent Brian Alvarez a text message today, and I said, horrible irony here that you named your daughter Paisley a few weeks ago when she was born, and Prince just died.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know they picked the name because it's a beautiful name, but it's a hell of a coincidence right now.
There were a few more WWE points I had wanted to hit on before we close the show, too.
Sure, but before you do that, I'll just go ahead and tell our listeners that 999 yen is $9.13. So go ahead and buy that subscription to New Japan World.
It's over $9, but yeah, it's still a better deal than the WWE network.
Absolutely. So what other WWE points did you have?
One of the things that I really liked when watching Raw was in the opening theme segment that they had video clips for the NXT guys they had just brought up.
Yes, indeed.
I don't know if you noticed that, but yeah, Enzo Amore and Big Cass were in there. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys that were in there that they brought up, but I'm like, that's new. They just came up, but they've already got the video package. So good work for whoever the WWE crew is that puts that together and being on the ball and getting them in that opening montage. I like.
Yeah, I think Apollo Crews wound up in there too.
Yeah, I think he was another one of the ones that did, and I really liked that you had Enzo Amore and Big Cass going over on the established team of the Dudley Boys, and then you had the Vaudevillains going over people that nobody likes in the Usos to meet in the finals at Payback for the tag team tournament.
Yeah, exactly. It's giving the new blood a chance by having both sides of the tournament be fresh faces. Honestly, it's the most logical booking I could have thought of, and I never thought they would actually do that.
Indeed, and big shout out to the London crowd for chanting "boring" during Roman Reigns. That was just, as the Brits would say, that was just spot on.
Yeah, it was very appropriate, very fitting. But it's just nice to see Enzo and Big Cass get that reaction wherever they go. Because way back in the day when we would talk about this, I always feared that was a gimmick that was great in front of Full Sail University, but I didn't know how it would play to the big audience. And boy, if I was ever wanting to be wrong about something, I wanted to be wrong about that, because I am so glad to see Enzo get those big reactions when he drops those one-liners. It's fabulous.
And I think the New Day has a lot to do with paving the way for getting the crowd ready for a team like that.
Exactly. In fact, funny you should mention that, but just today in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, I read that it is the thing that is keeping the New Day on top right now. They were number one in merchandise sales at WrestleMania 32.
Oh, especially with the Bootios t-shirts that they put out. It's like, yeah, it's just one of those throwaway things like Bootios that takes off and becomes a sensation, kind of like unicorn horns.
Indeed. In fact, I probably would have bought a unicorn horn if they weren't all sold out of everything. I had to order my Bootios t-shirt on WWE Shop while I was at the show because they were sold out of everything.
I mean, the New Day kind of has that Midas touch. It's like whatever they do is gold. It's just like, they tried to bury them. They tried to make them heels, but they got over.
They got over by being themselves. They got over by goofing around and having fun, and the crowd got into it. I mean, sometimes it just works. So, it's like what we were saying earlier when we were talking about Eddie and Chyna. It's like the moment Eddie got to show that personality, it worked.
Indeed, and the one other thing that I'm noticing is, and again, we're kind of in bizarro world here with the WWE, Payback is shaping up to look like a better card than WrestleMania.
Yeah, I just don't understand lately how they're suddenly doing everything right, even though they got to it in the wrong way. For example, Shane McMahon being in charge of Raw, even though he lost at WrestleMania. It's like, this shouldn't have happened. He shouldn't be in charge. But damn it if it's not a better show with him in charge.
Yeah, it's like continuity be damned, but at least they're doing the right thing for the wrong reason instead of doing the wrong thing for the right reason.
Yeah. Whoa, breaking news here. Do you want to read this or should I?
I read it. I'll let you read it. You can let the folks out there know what just transpired in NXT.
Samoa Joe has defeated Finn Balor for the WWNXT Championship at the Lowell House Show.
Wow.
So maybe he is going to be coming up to the main roster and getting involved in this whole hashtag Bullet Club thing after all.
Yeah, if he comes up, that's the only way that I can see Anderson and Gallows turning on Styles and it making sense, because otherwise it makes zero sense to have Anderson and Gallows turn on Styles. It's just stupid. You're just throwing away a fortune doing that.
I agree, but that definitely puts a whole new spin on our conversation from earlier.
It sure does, but yeah, just the card from top to bottom at Payback, at least what they've announced so far. I mean, we know Roman Reigns is taking on AJ Styles. I'd love to see some shenanigans with the Bullet Club there. We'll see what comes out of that. But even The Miz, putting him in there with a guy like Cesaro is wonderful, because you need a huge babyface to counteract. I don't know if you want to call him a heel or just X-Pac heat or whatever with The Miz, but that should be a good. It's like I never want to see Miz on my TV again because he's just boring as whale shit. But Cesaro is awesome. The Dutch Neutralizer is awesome.
I'm just concerned with Cesaro that they have started and stopped with him so many times now, and he's still over with the crowd. They still love him. People are buying the Cesaro section t-shirt. It's a great thing, but it makes me wonder, at some point, do they completely lose faith and give up because he gets pushed a little bit and then they recede on it, and they pushed a little and they recede on it? Like, how many times can we go through this with Cesaro?
I don't know. I mean, I think the fans are still behind Zack Ryder, even with him getting shit on as he does by the WWE.
Yeah, well, the difference is Cesaro is at least on TV. Zack Ryder, until this whole thing came up for WrestleMania, wasn't even on TV.
Sure, I just think Cesaro, especially like you're saying, with the Cesaro section and with the fans that he's had, the smart marks who, liked him as Claudio Castagnoli way back when.
I am wearing my Claudio shirt right now, as a matter of fact.
I don't think there's ever going to be a lack of Cesaro fans. Just, no matter how how poorly they book him, or how they try to book him into oblivion, people are still going to cheer the guy. He's kind of, he's kind of like a Sami Zayn or an AJ Styles. He's a guy that people are just going to cheer.
Yeah, I feel like at some point when this happened, like with Daniel Bryan, WWE eventually got the hint. But with Cesaro, I really don't feel like they've gotten the hint.
I don't know. Yeah, it's just like the thing that WWE wants to know with Cesaro is that he's Swiss. That's very important to them. But I mean, even the Dean Ambrose versus Chris Jericho, it's like, this is a feud that I like, because you have two guys that have been and can be loose cannons and can just kind of go off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say that Jericho's gone the extra length healing it up of late, so I kind of appreciate that, and I appreciate Ambrose just basically taking that and crapping all over his parade. Like, you might be able to intimidate other people, but I'm a certifiable lunatic, and you being a heel with everybody else doesn't work on me, buddy.
Exactly. Dean Ambrose not having to play by your typical babyface playbook is wonderful. And just him being able to shoot very straight with Chris Jericho, it just works. And I just like the matchup of Ambrose versus Jericho so much better than I like the matchup of Jericho versus Styles. This is just a much better fit.
You know what? It won't be a clash of styles.
It will not be a clash of styles.
That joke is going to get old pretty quick, but for this show, it's gold.
Hashtag Clash of Styles on Twitter. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just about to say, I can actually commission you to print that T-shirt. Hashtag Clash of Styles.
Hashtag Clash of Styles. I can make a T-shirt for that. But yeah, I was going to say, even the continuation of the Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens feud. I mean, this is something that we want to see. It doesn't matter if the IC title is involved. It doesn't matter if any title is involved. Just seeing these two guys in the ring, just beating the hell out of each other, is always damn entertaining.
And yet there's the part of me in the back of my head that says, I know they have great matches. I know they've always had great matches. I've never seen a match live or on tape that they haven't, but does it just become too cliche to always pair them together endlessly to the point where neither of them can achieve anything else because they always got to keep coming back to each other?
I think at some point, and maybe by SummerSlam, the feud will reach a head, boil over, and they'll start other programs, other feuds, especially if we have Shane still running things, so to speak. But yeah, assuming WWE is committed to going in directions that are making sense and more what fans want to see, that's what I foresee happening.
One more thing I have to say about this as we start to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
Usually after WrestleMania, there's like the first Raw that's really hot when they introduce new people, when titles change hands and all the fun things happen. And then it feels like it cools down and it keeps cooling down. And then by SummerSlam, you're like, okay, it's just another show. And then it starts to build back up a little bit towards Survivor Series. And then it really builds back up towards Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. So what I'm saying here is we usually get this cooling down. And right now I don't feel like it's cooling down. I feel like it's actually getting a little hotter.
And I think it has to, because you had like a D-level pay-per-view at WrestleMania, and you really couldn't go much further down from where WrestleMania went. And it's kind of a good thing that they threw continuity out the window, because their ship was sinking so much. They needed to do something to turn it around. And I think that's, I mean, look what you have. Look what you have here.
You've just made yourself Vince Russo. You've said to hell with continuity.
To hell with continuity when you're booking yourself into oblivion. When you booked yourself into a corner and there's nowhere to go, yes, throw continuity out the window and do something that makes sense, which Vince Russo would never do. He'd have like a Viagra on a pole match or something. But I mean, more to the point where you're saying it's heating up, and this is something that they didn't do at Mania, but they're doing at Payback. We have Charlotte with Ric Flair versus Natalya, but guess who's going to be in Natalya's corner? Bret Hart. That didn't happen at WrestleMania. That's happening at Payback. What the hell?
I know, it is weird, but isn't it awesome that he has recovered enough from his cancer treatment to be able to come out there and corner her? I mean, just the emotion of that for me is a key point in watching Payback. Just the fact that Bret Hart, after all these tragedies we've had in the last few months, that Bret Hart is still alive and kicking and doing well and able to be out there. That's huge for me right now, especially on a day like today.
That's probably the most notable thing to me. It's like, say what you will about Bret Hart in the ring, say what you will about Bret Hart out of the ring, but the fact that he is recovered enough to make an appearance in Natalia's corner and be there to be the equalizer to Ric Flair just says everything about Bret Hart's character and his recovery.
About Bret's heart, actually. That shows you,
Bret Hart's heart.
Yeah, how much heart Bret Hart has. So.
But yeah, I'm hoping that this will kind of buck the trend you were talking about cooling off to SummerSlam, and this year in 2016 we will have things heat up to SummerSlam.
That would be a nice change of pace. So let's hope they can keep this positive momentum going, because then we won't be angry Marks. We can actually be happy Marks. I kind of like that.
And someone like me who, isn't really a WWE fan will look forward to tuning into WWE.
Mm-hmm. Well, the more they add New Japan elements to it, the more you'll look forward to it. I know that for a fact.
In a backhanded, yeah. I mean, and on the one hand, they're taking guys away from New Japan, and I'd rather have them in New Japan. But if they're going to be in WWE, at least use them right, and then I'll watch with some interest.
Absolutely. And speaking of things to watch with interest, there's got to be some new stuff on veggiebending.wordpress.com for people to check out.
The one thing that I'm thinking of doing, I'm going to have to find some kind of recipe to make to dedicate to Chyna. Now, seeing she was a vegan, I'll have to do some kind of Chyna memorial recipe coming up here soon on veggiebending.wordpress.com. But yeah, definitely check out my recipe for tofu vindaloo, especially if you're a Red Dwarf fan, because that's up there. You can also check out some of the Avatar pumpkins that I've carved with my pumpkin cake recipe. Of course, New Japan World, it's the best 999 yen you can spend a month. You can watch all the pay-per-views and catch us live on Twitter, live tweet with us. You can watch pay-per-views from the year past. You can even watch the Suzuki-Gun show, which was wonderful. I recommend that to anybody who has the network, and it's only $9.13 a month. And if you want to live tweet with me at Twitter, you can get me at Great Sudoku there on Twitter.
And even though Abby couldn't be with us here tonight, I will let everybody know she had a change of Twitter, or as she likes to say, she got her old name back. So if you're following her, then you already know, and if you're not, it's at Abby A.
Yeah, I told her she should have taken the handle at Stupid Tana, but maybe I'll make one of those. Yeah, at Stupid Tana, stupid hair.
I thought I was the one who came up with at Stupid Tana, stupid hair. I thought that was my idea.
That was yours. I was just at Stupid Tana.
Well, maybe one of us should set that up as a parody account for her. Just like my wife follows this guy on Twitter named Fake Dan Beebe, because there's a real Dan Beebe in college sports and college football. So she follows the parody one and gets great mirth out of it. So maybe we need to start doing that with us. We need parody Angry Marks accounts.
Oh yeah, we definitely need a Stupid Tana account, and the profile picture is him playing air guitar.
And we need a Happy Marks account with me attending a show with a full crowd and everybody cheering.
Happy Marks.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for Thursday Night AMP. For my co-host, Jason, a.k.a. The Great Sudoku, for our guest, Michael Kingston, and for our producer, Killicab, always doing great work behind the boards, thank you for listening. Have a good night and a great weekend, everybody.